Hi, this is a foreigner in the Philippines, and it's not exactly late night because we decided that we would start to get home before it gets dark, and in this case before it rains. We've had a respite from the rain, but now it's just started again, so I hope it doesn't get too noisy. Now, one of the things that I think bonded me to my son when I was bringing him up as a single parent was that I used to read to him every night. Now, I always talk about how lucky I am right now, and I usually, if I'm on Facebook, I show a picture of my wife and I say, I'm a very fortunate man. This is the last face I see before I close my eyes to sleep, and it's the first face that smiles at me when I open my eyes in the morning. And that makes me the most fortunate of men. Well, when I was a single parent and I was bringing up my son alone, obviously, I'm a single parent, one of the things that we used to enjoy doing together was reading. And we used to enjoy reading a lot of different books. Now, when he and his brother, before we split and came to America, I used to read to them both. Theo stayed with his mom and Luke came with me. And Paul was the older boy and he wasn't mine, so even though he wanted to come with me, he couldn't because I hadn't legally adopted him. So it was just me and Luke that came. But when it was the three of them, I used to read, and it was something that bonded us together. Well, what did we read? Well, they wanted me to read the Ghostbusters. And after you've done a couple of times through the Ghostbusters story, you really want to do something else. So I made a deal. They could read the Ghostbusters themselves, but I would have to read something with a bit more substance. So eventually, when it was just Luke and I, we read some classic books. And one of the classic books is Winnie the Pooh. Now, I do have a friend who has found Winnie the Pooh for me. I left it, stupidly, I left it at home in Florida. I didn't bring it with me, and I really regret doing that. But another friend, Rob, has gone to the trouble of writing one of the stories out. And he's done that, and I think it's on my phone, either that or it's on Gmail. I don't know where it is. So then coincidentally, after I decided that I was going to do this and have one little corner of our channel which was for storytelling, I thought that I could do another story. And this other story was something that I saw narrated on television when I was in the UK, and I thought that it was a pretty cool story. So I have to take you first to the streets of Paris for atmosphere. And there is a homeless man, dressed very poorly obviously, and he's walking along the streets. And of course he's very hungry. And as he walks past all of the different places, he walks past the jewellers and he sees all the things that he would never be able to afford. All the jewellery and the gold, everything that glitters. And he sees all of this and he wishes he was better off. And then he walks past a place that has fine clothes. And he looks at his shabby clothes and he wishes for that too. And finally, on to shoes. He looks at his own worn out shoes and the beautiful shoes that are in the shop window and he wishes for that too. But then he goes to the more ordinary stores where it's food, and food is much more important in a much more immediate way to him. And he goes past the butcher. There's not great smelling coming from the butcher because it's all raw meat, isn't it? Anyway, after that he passes the baker and he stops to look in the baker's shop, and the baker sees him looking with such longing on the bread that is in the window, and he takes pity on him and he gives him a piece of bread, a piece of fine, fresh bread. And the homeless man smells the bread with great appreciation. And as he walks along, he's almost reluctant to eat some of the bread, even though he's really very hungry. And then the next store that he passes is actually a restaurant, and it's a fine restaurant. And the smells of the French cooking are wafting out of the door. And he pauses at the window and he looks in at the people in their fine clothes and their fine shoes and their fine jewellery, all the things that he knew he'd never afford. And he sees on the table the fine food, and he looks down at the humble piece of bread in his hand, and he wonders how he could possibly make that taste more than a piece of bread. And then a little way to the side, by the restaurant, still in the wall of the restaurant, is a grill, and underneath is where all of the cooking is done. That's where the kitchen is. And he goes to the grating and he stands over the grating, and all of these wonderful smells are coming up of this fine cooking that he would never be able to afford. And in a moment of magical imagination, he took his bread and he passed the bread over the grating, so that the smell of the bread would go, as the smell of the cooking would go onto the bread. And he did that several times. And as he was doing it, the owner of the restaurant, not a very nice man, came out and said, "You're stealing the smells from my cooking. That belongs to me." And he has the homeless man arrested, and the police know this man, of course, and he's expensively dressed, and he owns a restaurant, and he's very influential. And they take the homeless man away before he can even have a bite of his bread. And the next day, the court is held, and the homeless man is taken into court, and he stands in the dock, and the owner of the restaurant comes up and speaks to the judge and says, "Your Honour, this is what happened. This man stole the smells from my fine restaurant to put on his humble piece of bread. Look at him, he's just a homeless man." Well, the judge looked at the rich restaurant owner, and he looked at the humble homeless man. And he said to the homeless man, "You are guilty as charged. You have stolen the smell of the cooking to eat with your bread. You've stolen this from the restaurant owner. Now, do you have any money?" And the homeless man looked in his pocket, and he had 2 pennies. He said, "Your Honour, I have only 2 pennies. So the judge said, "I fine you for your crime of theft 2 pennies. You will pay your 2 pennies to the owner of the restaurant. But as you stole the smell of his food, you will pay with the sound of your money." And the homeless man took his 2 pennies and he chinked them together. Clink, clink. This is a foreigner living in the Philippines. If your children are watching, good night.